Kilkeel Hockey Club, our top story, banned from the Hockey Ireland competitions, All Ireland competitions next season because of their refusal to play on Sundays. We're asking you today if you think this is an example of really the marginalisation of people with sincerely held, strongly held Christian convictions in our society. Do you stand with that team in choosing not to play on Sundays, and are you concerned that they appear to be penalised harshly for making that decision? 03030 80 55 55. Let's talk first to the sports writer Steve Beacom. How you doing, Steve? Good afternoon.
Good morning, or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, we just woke you up, did we?
Yeah.
Can I just ask, first of all, Steve, about just how rare is this case? I can think of individual players in various sports who have refused to play on a Sunday, but a whole team here. Is that unusual?
It is certainly unusual, William, in the world of sport, particularly in today's world of sport, because so many teams are aware that they have to play on a Sunday. It doesn't really matter what sport you play, but you have to play on a Sunday. But I do believe that Linfield Football Club, the Irish League team who are set to win the Irish League Championship, they still won't play football on a Sunday at Windsor Park, which is really interesting. And Northern Ireland didn't actually play football on a Sunday at Windsor Park until March 2015. So things have changed dramatically over the years. We'll get on to the history of how sport on Sunday has really come about.
Well, just actually, let's do that now. Let's just how has it changed over the years?
Well, it's such a fascinating and emotive subject, this, William. It really is, because for years there have been certain sports that have played on Sunday, like Gaelic games, for example. Baseball in America has been huge on a Sunday for decades and decades. Actually, going back to the 1950s, they noticed that it actually doubled their attendance, and at that stage there was a big debate in America because not as many people were going to church on a Sunday because they preferred to go to the baseball.
Right.
But in British culture, I think it really changed in the early 1980s when football, big football matches started to be screened live on television. I can remember the very first one. It was Spurs against Nottingham Forest back in the early 80s. And all that was to do with TV revenue. The TV companies didn't want to screen matches on a Saturday. They wanted them on a Sunday because they thought they'd get bigger ratings and the advertising would be bigger. And from that moment on, football, all the big matches have been played on a Sunday, and other sports have followed suit. Wimbledon, for example, we always think about Wimbledon and the men's final being on a Sunday. It wasn't until 1982 that actually happened. It's one of the greatest finals of all time, Borg versus McEnroe in 1980. It took place on a Saturday, for example. And again, it was a commercial decision.
Yeah.
Wimbledon and the BBC decided, they'd get better ratings on a Sunday. So it was put on a Sunday, and it has been like that ever since.
And of course, if we look at Gaelic sports in Ireland, Sunday's been a very important fixture date.
Oh, absolutely huge. Like, Sunday is essentially Gaelic, a day for all the Gaelic Games fans. You think of the All-Ireland. The Olympics 1924, it was one of the races was on a Sunday, and because of Eric's Christian beliefs, he refused point blank to compete that day. And back in 1924, if social media was around then, that story would have been doing the rounds for months and months and months, and even now we're talking about it. Johnny Jameson, a Northern Ireland footballer, he was a born-again Christian. He refused to play in the 1982 World Cup finals because that match was on a Sunday. Other ones, one of the greatest rugby players of all time, Michael Jones, New Zealand player, he wouldn't play on a Sunday in the World Cup in 1991. He missed 3 games. And then in 1995, he wasn't even selected for the squad because the quarter-finals and the semi-finals were going to be on a Sunday. And you've Jonathan Edwards, famous triple jumper. He didn't go to the 1991 World Championships because he would have been competing on a Sunday. Yet 2 years later, he had changed his mind and did decide to go. And, of course, he had a hugely successful career. Although a decade after that, interestingly, William, he admitted that his faith had completely gone.
That's
so,
right.
and he was wondering then why he actually didn't compete on the Sunday first time around. There's a Scottish rugby star, Ewan Murray, who decided against it. And there's another one here, Sandy Koufax, who was a baseball player in the 60s. he didn't want to play on Jewish holidays. And this is a guy who got into the World Series, which is like the biggest event in baseball. So there were some Jewish holidays on during the World Series, so he didn't compete those days, but on all the other days he did compete, and his team actually won the World Series. But again, it was massive then.
Steve, we've got to leave it, but thank you very much. Steve Beacon, the sports writer, he could go on forever, couldn't he? He's got an encyclopedic knowledge of Sunday sports around the world, it would seem. Most of the examples that he's just given us from sort of this side of the Atlantic have to do with Protestant evangelical Christians with a Sabbatarian conviction. Obviously, there are other examples with Jewish people, of Jewish faith, and there will be other religious examples around the world. But overwhelmingly, that is what we're talking about here. Jim Wells, the MLA Jim Wells, is in the Talkback studio with me. How are you doing?
Afternoon.
Welcome,
William.
Good to see you. And Michael Nugent, chair of Atheist Ireland, is down the line. How are you doing, Michael?
Good afternoon.
Welcome. Good to have you back with us, Michael. Jim, first of all, you're standing with this Kilkeel team. Do you think they're being discriminated against? Do you think they're being penalised for their religious views?
Well, there's no question about it, William. They are. Not only are they being banned from this year's competition, but they and the junior team, the second team, are being banned as well from competitions next year. I think that's extremely harsh. And I asked the question, William, some of the world's best hockey players are from the Muslim tradition. If the situation arose, say, in North London, and they were being forced to play their matches on a Friday and they decided they didn't want to, would there be some accommodation? Yes, there would. But because many of the players in Kilkeel are either from a Christian faith or don't want to send their children to Sunday school or Bible class or attend services themselves, they're basically being told, we don't want you in your competition. Now, William, matches are changed all the time in Irish hockey for various reasons, such as fixture congestion, weather, etc. It would have been so easy for the IHU to have simply said, OK, let's play it on a Saturday or a Wednesday night. There would have been no problem. But they're digging their heels in and they're saying, we have no respect for your Christian faith, and therefore, not only are we not allowing you to continue in the competition, we're going to ban you from next year's. Now, that's totally unfair.
Well, you're talking about the authorities, the hockey
Irish Hockey Union.
They haven't said we don't respect your Christian faith.
Well, what they're saying, they're punishing them by saying, we will ban you from next year's competition because you have said, because this match happened to fall on a Sunday, we're saying to you, we'll ban you for all of next year's competitions. That's grossly unfair and doesn't respect the sincerely held views held by many members of the team in Kilkeel.
Michael Nugent, do you think this is about not respecting the Christian convictions of these players?
No, it's not. It's about a team refusing to fulfil a fixture for whatever reason. I mean, I remember when I was a child in Carrickfergus, there was protests because the BBC programme It's a Knockout was held on a Sunday, and Ian Paisley was complaining about that. It said it was trying to republicanise the Lord's Day and held a hymn service outside it. No, I think we've moved on from that. And the principle should be that sports organisations should not discriminate against people on the grounds of religion, but equally they shouldn't privilege people on the grounds of religion. And if a team enters a competition, they abide by the rules of the competition. Now, Jim was asking about what would happen if you had a Muslim team. Well, that's actually happened last year. The World Cup in Russia overlapped with Ramadan, and there were 7 Muslim countries affected by that, or largely Muslim countries, and they weren't given any derogations. The Saudi team just opted to defer their fast until after the tournament. The other countries dealt with it in different ways. And you were talking earlier on about Michael Jones, the New Zealand rugby union player who didn't play during the World Cup. Well, the New Zealand side actually asked at the following World Cup, could the matches be rescheduled so that New Zealand wouldn't have to play on a Sunday? And they were told, no, it can't. You operate on the same basis as all of the other teams. And that's the basic principle of sport, is everybody operates on the same basis as everybody else, regardless of their religious beliefs.
Jim Wells, my understanding is that the hockey team here, the Kilkeel hockey team in this tournament, this competition, they understood, and it was advertised in advance, that there was a possibility that there may be Sunday fixtures.
Yes, well, but of course they have no idea how far in the competition they were going to go.
They were going to get.
And remember, in Kilkeel, we don't have any rugby tradition. Hockey is the main sport in the town. And it's a small town, and this is perhaps the one sport that the town really excels at and plays at a very high standard. And what you're saying is that team will be banished from a series of competitions, and that young people who want to excel in the sport have to go elsewhere. And I think that's very unfortunate.
And this was a unanimous decision by Kilkeel hockey team.
Yes, because there are those Kilkeel members who are Christians and who are churchgoers.
Every single
and
player.
There are other players who don't have the same view, but respect the ethos of the others. They don't want to force them.
So it's not like you have a hockey team where every single one of them Sabbatarian.
But the point being, a practical point of view, William, on a Sunday for me, you've got, when I had young children, commitments of Sunday school, Bible class, church, maybe you had somebody singing in the choir, you had youth organisations.
Exhausting.
Sunday was often very busy.
Consider having a rest on a Sunday.
No, Sundays were often very busy because there was, for instance, you had youth services for instance, GB, BB, etc.
Yeah, no, I remember.
And sadly, William, often you have funerals. So Sundays can be very busy for people who are involved in church life. And therefore, from a practical point of view, you're saying to these people that they maybe have to travel to Cork to play hockey. It's not a question of even Kilkeel itself. They're going to Dublin, Wicklow,
but the other
and
thing
Cork.
is that these are amateur sports.
Yes.
This is an amateur sport. So
it's their day
people
off.
are out working on Monday to Friday, one would suppose. See, that leaves amateur sports just 2 days to organise their tournaments and competitions and fixtures. If you say we're not going to do anything on Sundays, you're limiting by 50% the real estate of your sport.
But the Irish League has been able to organise tournaments, 5 or 6 tournaments a year, the Irish Cup, etc., the County Antrim Shield, and all of those competitions without having to play on a Sunday. Right. This is pretty practical, that one match a year could be moved by 24 hours to facilitate a team that has difficulties with Sunday matches. That's not unreasonable.
And if you did have a Muslim player in the Irish team, and there are Muslims in Ireland who are involved in sports, would you support not having fixtures during Ramadan?
Our fixtures on a Friday, which is the holy day.
Would you support that?
Yes, I would, because the same principle will have to apply. And equally, a Jewish player. Now, we have a very small Jewish community, as you know, in Northern Ireland. Yeah. But if some of them said that we didn't wish to play on a Saturday or officiate on a Saturday...
No sports on a Saturday?
No. Their team didn't want to officiate. A situation of a Jewish holy day, that should be respected.
That should be respected.
Because remember,
if you had, in a sort of multicultural Ireland, if you had a particular team in a particular sport where you've got a Muslim, a Jew, and a Presbyterian, all in the same team, Jim,
I'm thinking,
you're not going to be playing on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
No, I'm talking about the situation, Stephen, where you have a team that's
William.
Sorry, I swore at you there, didn't I? You have a team that is predominantly of one particular faith. Also,
but doesn't have to be that
also
way.
Those that, for instance, are of a different faith to the majority of the team who do not wish to play should be allowed not to play and should not be penalised for doing so. They shouldn't be dropped for any future matches.
Michael Nugent, would that be workable? Is that practicable?
Of course it's not practical. I mean, there's over 100 religious denominations in the Republic of Ireland. I don't know how many there are in Northern Ireland.
Far more.
But you can't simply have a set of sports rules that accommodate people's religious beliefs when that's not what sport is about. Equally, then you'll have people saying, well, we don't like playing against gay people, so we only want to play against teams that are heterosexual. It's just literally not practical. Sports organisations, again going back to basic principles, they shouldn't discriminate on the grounds of religion, but equally they shouldn't privilege people on the grounds of religion. And it seems to me that the people who have been most discriminated against here are the people from the Kilkeel Hockey Club who were willing to play, but have been pressurised into not playing by the ethos of their own team, and then in turn, because their team has refused to fulfil its fixture, are unable to play in other tournaments.
Well, William, can I assure you, no one felt pressurised.
Can I just go to the calls? We're talking to Jim Wells, the MLA Jim Wells, and Michael Nugent from Atheist Ireland. What do you make of this? A whole team unanimously deciding they will not play on a Sunday. Are they now being penalised because of their religious convictions? That's what Jim Wells is saying. Or are they merely facing the consequences of their decision not to meet the terms and conditions of the sport? That's what Michael Nugent is saying. Jim's in Belfast. How do you see it, Jim?
Hello.
Hi, Jim.
Ethan, William. Well, the hockey team seems to be forced to play, and that shouldn't be.
Well, they're not forced to play. They're not playing. They're not playing.
They're forced not to play because they've changed the rules. But our gentleman keeps on saying the rules have been changed.
Well, how were the rules changed? Because the rules were the same at the beginning of the tournament.
not for a couple of years back. It's a new tournament.
So when you set up a new tournament, Jim, you set up a body of rules around it, yeah?
Yeah, it's an old tournament.
And if you take part in that tournament, you agree to abide by the rules.
Well, the rules have been changed. Regards the playing facilities, it's Saturday.
I see.
It used to be Saturday, now it's Sunday. And the team's been forced. Same as the IFA. They could have... they wanted not to play on a Sunday. They're forced to play on a Sunday.
All right, Jim, thank you very much, sir. Brian in West Belfast, how do you see it, Brian?
It only happens in Northern Ireland, William. So ridiculous. For instance, Jim Wells says that it's putting the celebrate against their faith and so forth. You know, it's nothing to do with that. There's 20 teams in a league, and one team doesn't want to play on a Sunday because of their faith. Does that organisation change the rules then? And why? What is wrong? What is wrong with playing on a Sunday or Saturday? What is wrong? Is it going to affect their souls? And I mean, it's so ridiculous. Jim Wells is talking about here. Kids going out. I'm not talking about this particular hockey team. I'm talking about all kids going out on a Sunday, playing football in the fresh air, doing their bodies healthways and so forth.
You might remember back in the day, Brian, we used to close the leisure centres and swimming pools and chain the swings together in some places on Sundays.
So, and it only happens, William. It only happens in Northern Ireland. It's so it makes my blood boil.
I don't think Sabbatarianism is only an issue in Northern Ireland.
Sorry?
You'll find it in other places.
But William, very hard. I mean, all I'm talking about is playing sports on a Sunday. What is wrong with that there?
Brian, thank you very much. I'll put that question right now to Jim Wells. What is wrong with that?
You're forcing people to miss their place of worship on a Sunday, particularly if it's away match. Secondly, and this is a point that's often missed, if you have organised sport, inevitably you have to employ people to supervise, officiate, groundsmen, etc. Again, there's many people who would prefer not to work on a Sunday for organised sport. And do they not have a right? And indeed, recently, Belfast City Council voted not to extend Sunday opening in shops because they respected the rights of the staff to have family time and church time. And I think that's a reasonable request.
I'll put that to Mike Nugent. Michael, you agree with religious freedom and the protection of religious freedom and the protection of people who have no religion in their freedom as well. Would you be concerned with Jim Wells about those possible employment consequences of Sunday sports?
Well, no, because nobody is forced to participate, but if you choose to participate, then you participate in accordance with the rules that are not based on religion. I mean, I can understand to some extent historically that a lot of sports teams did start as, parish teams of various denominations in the British Isles. Others would have come from either work teams or things like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is a tendency for people to associate sport, which in some ways is a kind of tribal community identity, with other tribal community identities such as religion. But in a multicultural, pluralist society, what you've got to do is, if you're participating in a competition that's for everybody across the country, regardless of their religious beliefs, then you've got to put that aside. And if you did have the option of saying, well, one religious group can have special treatment because of their beliefs, then you would have to extend that across the entire diversity. You have no sports during Ramadan. You would have no sports during Yom Kippur. You'd have no sports on a Sunday. You'd have arguably no sports on a Saturday or Friday. The whole thing would fall apart immediately. It's just literally not practical. And so teams have the option to enter competitions or not enter competitions. If people feel strongly about not playing on a Sunday and associating their sporting activity with their religion, then they should form a sporting association with others who feel the same way and have their own tournaments. And
sort of a Sabbatarian hockey league.
If they want, if it's that important to them to associate their religion with their sporting activities, then they're free to do that.
All right.
But once they're choosing to compete with other people from other religions across the country, then they can't just insist that their beliefs take precedence.
03030 80 55 55. I wonder if there's a member of the Kilkeel hockey team listening to this. Pick up the phone if you would and share some of your thoughts on the conversation that we've been having. Tell us why you feel so strongly about that. We'd love to hear from you. John's on the line. Hello, John.
Hello, William. How are you doing?
Welcome.
Well, I'm just curious about this whole situation with these kids. I suspect this has really got nothing to do with the kids. I don't think they've made this decision.
Kids?
These
are adults.
They're adults. They're in their 20s, most of them.
Well, okay, then. But I suspect it's someone in management who has made this decision, and therefore they are...
My understanding is that they had a meeting and they had a vote.
Yeah.
Hello?
John, they had a meeting and they had a vote and it was unanimous.
Well, therefore then, as the guy from the league says, then you cannot run a sport around one religion. You know, what happened to some person from the Jewish community? He can't play on a Saturday, so what do they do with him then?
He should be respected.
Everybody
yes.
should be respected, of course, but I mean, there's so many different religions in the world, they all practice on different days. You know, how do you sort that out?
John, thank you very much. I'm just wondering, this is in many ways here a case study in a Protestant conviction, a religious conviction within Protestantism, Sabbatarianism, to respect the Lord's Day, the Sunday, as a holy day, a day for worship, for rest and recreation, but not for employment and not for this kind of organised sport. I wonder how that tradition seems to people who are not from that tradition. Maybe you're Catholic, maybe you are Muslim or Jewish, maybe you're from a Christian Protestant tradition but doesn't have that feature of Sabbatarianism in your approach to life. What do you make of that in 2019? Can you get your head around that approach to one day of the week, Sunday? Maverick is there in Kilkeel. Hello, Maverick.
Hello. No, I respect these people that don't want to play on Sunday, you know. That's their decision, and I don't think it should be penalised at all. And I'm a GAA player.
So what if they break the rules of the tournament by refusing a fixture?
But sure, all rules are there been broke, aren't they, somewhere?
I like your attitude.
But
you see laws as a challenge, really.
Yeah, but can I... Jim Wells there?
Yes,
Maverick.
Maverick, yeah.
No, I was originally from Ballymurton Football Club, you know, and at one stage we had to play up in the council ground, you know, and the goalposts were cut down 2 or 3 times, you know. I think someone had to play fair here, you know.
Well, I don't think the hockey club were involved in that. I think that's a totally different issue.
He's not saying that. Maverick, thank you very much, sir. We'll go to Peter in Belfast. How you doing, Peter?
Well, I'm not a Christian, and I hate anybody throwing things in front of the face or walking through a town. But at the end of the day here, it's a Christian thing. Let's just put a scenario. If there was a gay team playing and they all wanted to play in trousers, you'd probably find people have more respect for that than they would the people go to church. I find that the Christian...
If there was a gay team and they all wanted to play in trousers?
Trousers instead of skirts.
What are you talking about?
This is a male hockey team, by the way. It's a male hockey team.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
Peter, you've had too much coffee already today.
Can you let me speak? Yeah?
No, go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
Skirts. I bet you get more respect than the Christian ones to play best.
All right, Peter, thanks very much. I have no idea what that
It's a male hockey team. I know. Make that point.
Did you understand what he was
No,
saying?
I didn't.
No, I didn't get it. All right. Peter, call us again sometime. That was great. Robert in Derry. How you doing, Robert?
Hello, sir. How are you? I
Welcome.
just wanted to make a quick point, please.
Yeah.
Because hockey has taken off quite well and the Irish team have done very well, and also hockey's very, very big down in the India and Pakistan and them countries. I'm sure if the girls or boys from there got onto the Ireland team, they might have to play in some other country, say in Russia or somewhere on a Sunday. Are they going to not just play? We'll play for Ireland, but we won't go out on a Sunday.
Oh, you mean if it was an international fixture?
Yes, you see, the hockey's doing so well now.
Yeah, it is doing
and
much
Ireland's
better.
done very, very well. But these people, if they're big into hockey, could end up on a national team.
Yeah.
Therefore, are they going to join a national team and say, look, but I won't do it that day and this day and things like that? I think it is pretty religious, you know. It's religious, but it's also a wee bit silly as well. You know.
Why do you think it's silly?
Because as somebody else said, previous caller said, how can playing sport affect you getting into the kingdom of heaven?
Well, could I just make a couple of points? First of all, nobody's dealt with the issue of forcing people to work on a Sunday, particularly the officials and the groundsmen, etc. Secondly, no one thinks of the residents who live in the area where the sports ground is situated, who have to then tolerate all of the disturbance on a Sunday afternoon as a result of organised sport. No one seems to take into the rights of so many people who are associated. Now, for instance, I have a campaign ticket for Northern Ireland soccer. There's one match every campaign I can't attend because it's held on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact of life. I don't get it.
But there are lots of people working Sundays. I mean, lots of Christians working Sundays.
Yes, but you see, sir, you just don't go, which is a very, very good point.
Well, it's his choice.
They don't stop the game for you.
No, they don't, but I couldn't go on a Sunday. But equally, the people who live down Windsor...
The people you're worried about who have jobs in this league and maybe very glad to have those jobs and really enjoy what they're doing, Jim, those jobs might have a requirement that you have to work when there's a fixture, and the fixture's on Sunday, you've got to work. And
many people are denied the opportunity to follow their particular role in life, particular profession, because they know if they say they prefer not to work on Sunday, they don't get the job. And I'm dealing with that regularly in Southdown, and that's discrimination against those who have a Christian faith who do not wish to work on a Sunday.
Let's go to Hillsborough. Walter's there. How are you doing, Walter? You're a member of Lisnagarvey Hockey Club.
Good afternoon. Yes, I am, for many years.
Yep.
And listening to your programme this morning, I think that the situation, I don't know of any specific rule in the Irish Hockey Union that you must play on Sunday. And normally what happens if a match is, for example, rearranged, it can be done between the two clubs. Right. For example, Lisnagarvey Hockey Club played last Tuesday night against Bangor in a rearranged match. Tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, they'll play Banbridge at Banbridge. Now, that doesn't suit Lisnagarvey because the match is normally at 3 or 2:30. But because Banbridge wanted, then Garvey will accommodate them.
Right.
Yes. As far as the religious aspect is concerned, I think that's a red herring. The guys in Kilkeel, for whom I have great respect, I remember them starting off back in the 1960s in the Ulster qualifying league actually at that time. So I support them because it's a matter of principle for them, but there's no reason why they can't be accommodated.
Well, when you say it's a matter of principle, it's a religious principle, isn't it?
Well, it might be.
So it is about religion.
But equally...
If they say so. But, and I don't want to play on a Sunday, but there are 6 other days in the week.
But what if the tournament has fixture dates and some of them turn out to happen in the way it works out, Walter? Some of them turn out to happen on a Sunday.
But they don't necessarily have to.
They don't necessarily have to happen. And you might be able to negotiate out. I get what you're saying. You might be able to negotiate your way around that. But what if you can? And the other team is saying, well, this is the only available team date for us. It's the fixture date.
Well, then
and it's a Sunday.
You forfeit the game.
And then what happens to you if you forfeit the game?
You simply forfeit the game and the other team go through to the next round of the Cup. Don't forget, these are only Cup competitions we're talking about.
Yeah, there's a very important point made there. Thank you for your contribution.
Walter, thank you.
The club was not given the option of speaking to its opponents and saying, can we have a chat about this and rearrange it? Because there's a lot of goodwill in Irish hockey. And that could easily have been done. But no, the big stick was used. They lost their position in the tournament and were told you can't come back next year.
Someone's texted anonymously, but it's one of those texts. I'm never quite sure what to make of these kind of texts because it does sound like they know something in the text that they may be connected to the story. I don't know. They're not telling us that, but I'll read it for you anyway. The Kilkeel club have been consistent about this and withdrawn from the Irish Hockey League playoffs in the past. There's nothing new in their approach. This was originally scheduled for Saturday, not Sunday. The school grounds are not available on a Sunday. That's what they say in that text. Bit cryptic.
Yes, I'm not quite certain where that's coming from. The grounds are adjacent. It's a shared pitch between the school and the hockey club. Most of the players in Kilkeel Hockey Club have graduated through the school team, and there's a fantastic new facility there. And again, you have to respect the view of the school as well, who don't normally have events on a Sunday either. Now, I'd need to dig a bit deeper as to what the meaning of that is, because that's an interesting comment.
One text here from Sue says, really, this conversation is evidence that we need to take religion out of sport and politics. Most of the world's problems, she says, are caused by religious beliefs. Northern Ireland is a disaster. Look at international events here, not allowed to run on Sunday if the weather's a disaster on a Saturday. Why? Do you agree with that sentiment, Michael Nugent, that you can take religion entirely out of sport in a place like Ireland?
Well, you can't take it out of people's minds. So, but I think the honourable thing for the Kilkeel club to have done in the situation, consistently with their religious convictions, would have been to say, we have a lot of players who don't want to play on a Sunday and their religious beliefs mean that they're not going to. So we will do our best to fulfil the fixture with a weakened team that may include a number of reserve team players or second team players, we're not going to play as well as we might do because.
But they've been banned as well.
But that's.
They're all banned. That's the problem. There's no option. Both teams are banned.
No, they've been banned because they didn't fulfil the fixture. But if they had fulfilled the fixture with a weakened side, then they could have the players who didn't want to play could have kept to their principles.
The ban is a penalty for not fulfilling the rules, not
exactly, yeah,
complying with
the
rules.
The team could have played and made the point. Lost the game heavily because they were playing a weakened team and while standing up for their principles. Okay. But as I say, it's not unique.
No, I get it. Michael, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I'm sorry I've got to break in. I want to just get to John, who's been waiting there for a wee while. He wants to ask a question. John, in Fermanagh. Hello, John.
Hello. I'd like to ask Jim Wells, if someone takes a job in a factory and the shift work is different days, like you work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week, you're off Thursday, Friday, then you work Saturday, Sunday, Monday, are they going to turn around to their employer and say, I'm not coming into work on Sunday, I want to go to church? If you take your job,
well, they should be entitled to ask for that. It's a reasonable request, just like a Jewish person asking for Saturday off. And factories, particularly the large factories, should work around the needs and the desires of their individual employees.
You live in the real world. Employment, if you get the job, you'd be very glad to take the job.
You probably wouldn't get the job if you said you wouldn't work on a Sunday. Unfortunately, that's discrimination against Christians.
How many people? I actually drive a lorry, and you think if I said to my employer, I'm not going out in the boat on Sunday, churches can change. You're saying about church times. I'm a unionist, Protestant, whatever you want to call it. But why, you make out that church has to be from this time to that time? Why can you not turn around and say, right, we'll hold church at a different time?
Well, because it's more than church. Knowing some of the individuals, you've got Sunday school, Bible class, church organisations, and of course.
The simple thing is, don't play the sport.
Well, so you're saying there's no room for Christians in sport in hockey in Northern Ireland? Is that what you're saying?
I am not saying that.
Well, that's what you are saying.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is, if you don't like the rules, don't play the game.
We don't want you. If you've got a Christian conviction, we don't want you playing sport.
I don't vote for Sinn Féin. Simple reason I don't like them. If I didn't like them, I think I'm going to vote for them.
So you're saying there's no place for Christians in sport in Northern Ireland if the sport's played on a Sunday. Is that what you're saying? Because that's discrimination.
I am saying there's different sports. You can play different sports. Well, you go down south on Sunday. There's soccer, there's Gaelic.
I have, yes.
There's no problem. They can go to the chapel and churches, and they have no problem playing their sports.
All right.
Same in the you said about the Northern Ireland match. I went to the Northern Ireland match this Sunday that you were standing outside protesting.
Well, I personally wasn't. I was at church.
I'm not saying you personally.
He doesn't do protests on a Sunday.
Definitely not.
But the one church did. The church people out of a certain church in Belfast stood out and handed leaflets, and I asked the guy, what are you doing today? And he says, I am something, it's a Sabbath day. I goes, hold on. I goes, why are you out here giving out these here leaflets saying...
All right. John, we've got to leave it. I get your point that you were at this event on a Sunday and there were protests from some people who were protesting. Obviously, some Sabbatarians don't have a problem protesting on a Sunday, though they would have a problem playing football or hockey on a Sunday. OK, thank you very much. Michael Nugent and Jim Wells. I have no idea how Sinn Féin managed to edge its way into that conversation.
And we never mentioned Brexit once.
That's off to John for managing that.